In the darkest nights, true courage shines the brightest. Freedom is never given, it is fought for, and it is won. When a nation stands united, no force in the world can break it. Strength is not in numbers, but in the spirit that refuses to surrender. History remembers not the conquerors, but the defenders of truth. And today, Ukraine writes its story of defiance, hope, and unshakable courage. Hello everyone, welcome back to the Frontline Report channel. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more updates from the war front. Today, we bring you an extraordinary story. Ukraine strikes back Russia on the defensive. The night over eastern Ukraine burned with the glow of distant fire. It was not the fire of the stars or the warmth of village hearths. It was the destructive fire of rockets, artillery, and missiles crisscrossing the black sky. For months, the world had watched Russia grind forward, using its massive arsenal to crush towns and force Ukrainian soldiers into retreat. But something had shifted. Beneath the smoke and ruins, a storm was brewing. A storm that would push Russia onto the defensive for the first time since the invasion began. From the exterior, the battlefield resembled a painting of despair. Roads were ripped apart, bridges collapsed into rivers, farmlands turned into craters. Doubt tanks sat like rusting skeletons, silent reminders of earlier clashes. The skeleton of a school building stood against the horizon, windows shattered, chalkboards still covered in lessons that would never be finished. The land was scarred, but it was not dead. In the silence between explosions, one could hear the faint buzz of drones, the hurried whispers of Ukrainian soldiers preparing for something bigger than another skirmish. In the interior, the story was one of endurance. Ordinary families huddled in basements, children clutching teddy bears while mothers whispered songs to drown out the thunder of shelling. Soldiers shared bread, laughter, and cigarettes, pretending for a moment that war had not stolen their youth. Inside command bunkers, generals pored over maps lit by dim lamps, while President Volodymyr Zelensky addressed the nation from Kiev with the same message he had given since day one: "We are still here, we will not surrender." The Ukrainian army had been underestimated countless times, but its performance told another story. Unlike Russia's lumbering offensives, Ukraine had learned to fight smart. Western, supplied systems like HIMARS had given them reach, precision, and the ability to strike where it mattered most. Russia relied on mass tanks, shells, bodies thrown into the grinder, while Ukraine relied on speed, agility, and accuracy. Bridges supplying Russian troops were targeted. Ammunition depots deep inside occupied territory exploded in towering infernos. Command posts that had felt untouchable suddenly crumbled under the weight of precision strikes. For the first time, Russia was scrambling to defend rather than advance. Soldiers who had once marched confidently across Ukrainian soil now dug trenches, unsure when the next strike would come. Tanks that had rolled westward now turned eastward in retreat. It was as if the giant had been wounded and the smaller fighter saw the opening it had been waiting for. But war was not just fought with weapons. It was also about survival, and Ukraine's safety features became a defining part of the resistance. Cities transformed their metro systems into underground fortresses. Volunteers organized networks to evacuate civilians, deliver food, and provide medical aid. In Kharkiv, doctors operated in underground shelters, saving lives while bombs fell above. In Kiev, air raid sirens became as common as church bells, yet life went on. Children still studied online, couples still married in makeshift ceremonies, and grandparents still told stories by candlelight. Survival itself became a form of defiance. Ukraine's unique selling point was not just its advanced weapons or Western support, it was the unity of its people. Soldiers at the front came from every background: teachers, farmers, IT professionals, students. They were not fighting for expansion or glory. They were fighting for their homes, their streets, their language, their right to exist. Every liberated town reminded the world that Ukraine's war was not abstract, it was deeply personal. And in that authenticity lay its strength. The price of this defiance, however, was brutal. Thousands of civilians killed, millions displaced, entire cities reduced to rubble. Economically, Ukraine faced collapse, infrastructure shattered by relentless Russian bombardment. Yet when asked, soldiers and civilians alike gave the same answer: it is a high price, but freedom is worth it. Russia, too, paid dearly. Thousands of soldiers lost, equipment abandoned, prestige shattered. What had been promised to the Russian people as a 3-day operation had dragged into years of blood and humiliation. As the counter-offensive unfolded, the world watched in awe. HIMARS strikes tore through supply lines, leaving Russian troops without fuel or ammunition. Special forces infiltrated occupied villages, raising Ukrainian flags at dawn. Bridges were destroyed to cut off reinforcements. Each success built momentum, and soon entire regions began to fall back into Ukrainian hands. In Kherson, the once celebrated Russian foothold, Ukrainian troops pushed forward with grit and determination. Villagers greeted them with tears, flowers, and bread. Old women kissed soldiers' hands, young men helped clear rubble from the streets, and children proudly waved blue and yellow flags. The joy was bittersweet. Many homes were destroyed, many families broken. But the return of freedom outweighed the pain. Meanwhile, in Moscow, Vladimir Putin sat with clenched fists. The image of strength he had cultivated for decades was slipping. Instead of victory parades, Russia faced funerals. Instead of dominance, it faced desperation. His speeches grew harsher, his threats louder, but the reality was undeniable. Russia, the so-called great power, was on the defensive. By winter, the lines had shifted dramatically. Ukraine's army, though exhausted, held strong. Each liberated town became both a victory and a warning. This war was far from over. Russia still had missiles, still had troops, and still had the capacity to inflict terror. But the myth of Russian invincibility was shattered forever. For Ukrainians, the story was not just about military triumphs. It was about resilience, about proving that even in the face of overwhelming odds, a nation could rise, fight back, and carve its place in history. As Zelensky told his people one frosty night, "We have endured the unendurable, we have paid the highest price, but we have shown the world, Ukraine lives, Ukraine resists, and Ukraine will win." The war was not over, but the message was clear. The tide had turned, Ukraine had struck back, and Russia was on the defensive. And when historians write of this era, they will not remember it as the age when Russia conquered Ukraine. They will remember it as the moment when Ukraine stood, fought, and proved that freedom, though costly, is never impossible.